Good day, everyone. By the way, my name is Angel Grace Batingal Tanyo, and I will be the first reporter to discuss about the historical development of art from medieval period to fine arts. So at the end of the lessons, students are expected to identify the different types and forms of arts produced in the medieval period, describe the relationship between medieval art and religion, differentiate the Renaissance art and medieval art, identify the historical development of fine arts, determine the artworks of artists in the 7th to 19th century, and appreciate the importance of the contributions of the fine art artists in the 17th to 19th century. In the history of Europe, medieval period, or also known as Middle Age, took place between 350 to 1450 AD. So why is it called medieval? With its root, midi meaning middle and eve meaning age. Medieval literally means of the Middle Age. In this case, middle means between the Roman Empire and the Renaissance. That is, after the fall of the great Roman state and before the rebirth of culture that we call the Renaissance. Much of the art in Europe during Middle Ages was religious art with Catholic subjects and themes. The different types of art included paintings, sculptures, metalwork, engraving, stained glass windows, and manuscripts. Art during Middle Age was different based on the location in Europe as well as the period of time. However, in general, Middle Age art can be divided up or classified into four major periods and styles, namely the early Christian, the Byzantine, the Romanesque, and the Gothic. Early Christian. So the art of this period produced by Christian or under Christian patronage from the earliest period of Christianity. Christianity strongly influenced the subject matter of medieval art, which is very often depicts religious figures and scenes. So Christian art is sacred art which uses themes and imagery from Christianity. So the artists use their artworks to express their faith or to describe biblical events and views on Christianity. So the arts include mosaics, paintings, sculptures, frescoes, and manuscripts. So let's have a look for the example of early Christian artworks. So the first example is the Ravenna mosaics. So it's an example of mosaics. Next is the sarcophagus of Junius Bassus, is an example of sculptures. Next is Byzantine art. So Byzantine art are produced by artists from Eastern Roman Empire, also known Byzantium. Byzantine art was characterized by its lack of realism. The artists did not try to make their paintings realistic, but focused on the symbolism of their art. So Byzantine art are mostly concerned with religious expression. So arts included mosaics, paintings, sculptures, and manuscripts. So let's have a look for the example of Byzantine art. So the first picture is the Theotokos of Vladimir. So that is a painting, and the mosaic of Christ Pantocrator. Next is the Romanesque art. So the period of Romanesque art started around 1000 AD and lasted to around 1300 with the beginning of the Gothic art period. So art prior to that is called pre-Romanesque. Romanesque art was influenced by both the Romance and Byzantine art. Its focus was on religion and Christianity. It included architectural details like stained glass art, large murals on walls and domed ceilings, and carvings on buildings and columns. It also included illuminated manuscript art and sculpture and painting. So here are the example of Romanesque art. So the painted crypt of San Etc. and the tomb of Rodolph of Swabia. Gothic art. Gothic art grew out of Romanesque art. Gothic art is began to use brighter colors, dimensions, and perspective and move toward more realism. So the primary media in the Gothic period, which included sculpture, panel painting, stained glass windows, frescoes, and illuminated manuscripts. So let's have a look for the examples of Gothic art. First is the Coronation of the Virgin. Then Gothic stained glass windows paints. Islamic art was also developed in the Middle Ages. So religious Islamic art has been typically characterized by the absence of figures and extensive use of calligraphic, geometric, and abstract floral patterns. So Islamic art in a form of illustrated manuscript, textiles, ceramic, metalwork, and glass. So let's have a look for the examples of Islamic art. So the folio from a Quran manuscript and the beggar who professed his life for a prince. Medieval architecture. Medieval architecture is architecture common in the Middle Ages and includes religious, civil, and military buildings. So the most commonly and extraordinary architectural buildings were the churches during the period of Middle Ages. So let's have a look for the examples of the medieval architecture, that the styles include pre-Romanesque, Romanesque, and Gothic. So the interior of the church of San Pedro de la Rosa is an example of pre-Romanesque style of medieval architecture. Next is the Pisa Cathedral, Romanesque style of medieval architecture. Then the Amiens Cathedral is now a Gothic style of medieval architecture. Also, the Chartres Cathedral, a Gothic style of medieval architecture. So now let's proceed to the types of arts produced in medieval period, which includes the ceramic art, heraldry, illuminated manuscripts, ivory carving, mosaics, sculpture, stained glass, tapestry, fresco wall painting, and panel painting. So that would be the end of my discussion about the historical development of art in medieval period. So thank you for listening, and the next topic is about Renaissance that will be discussed by the next reporter.
Hi everyone, my name is Catherine Dadan and my task is to discuss about the historical view of art in medieval period. After the Middle Ages, Europe experienced a passionate rebirth in its political, artistic, cultural, and economic spheres during the Renaissance. The Renaissance, which is generally understood to have occurred between the 14th and 17th century, encouraged the discovery of classical philosophy, literature, and art. The development of Renaissance art had three stages, which is early Renaissance, high Renaissance, late Renaissance, or Mannerism. In early Renaissance, emphasized that the man's relationship with the earth the universe and God was no longer the role domain of the church, had a major impact on Renaissance art. As a result, the artwork produced emphasized its subject emotional expressiveness and individually in new ways, providing viewers with a more personal way to experience art. These are the early Renaissance artists and their major artworks. Giotto di Bondone from Florence in the late Middle Ages. Giotto was an Italian painter and architect. He was an artist who produced work in the Gothic or Proto-Renaissance era. And these are his major artworks: Madonna Enthroned, Madonna and the Child, and The Flight into Egypt. Next is Donatello, also known as Donato. Donato di Niccolò di Bettobarde was Florentine Renaissance sculptor. He was raised in Florence and studied classical sculpture, which he used to create a comprehensive Renaissance style. And these are his major artwork. First is Magdalene Penitent, equestrian statue of Gattamelata, and the young David. Next is Masaccio, known as the first major Italian painter of the Quattrocento period of the Italian Renaissance. Masaccio was a Florentine artist who was born Tommaso di Ser Giovanni di Simone, and his major artworks are the Holy Trinity, the Tribute Mani, the Expulsion, and Madonna with Child and Angels. Next one and the last artist in early Renaissance is Filippo Brunelleschi. I don't know how to pronounce his name, and Filippo, considered to be a founding father of Renaissance architecture, was an Italian architecture designer and sculptor, and now is recognized to be the first modern engineer, planner, and sole construction supervisor. And these are his artworks: the Dome of Florence, Basilica of St. Lawrence, and Pazzi Chapel. Let's proceed to the next stages, which is the High Renaissance. All of the innovative and groundbreaking methods used in early Renaissance art were almost refined in High Renaissance art. Painting, architecture, and sculpture also significant invention and advancement during this time, including the introduction of new painting media like oils and perspective altering techniques. These are the artists and their major artworks in High Renaissance. First is Leonardo da Vinci. He is an Italian polymath of High Renaissance who was active as a painter, engineer, scientist, theorist, sculptor, and architect. And these are his major artworks: The Last Supper, Mona Lisa, The Annunciation, and Adoration of Magi. Next is Michelangelo, known as Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simon, who was an Italian High Renaissance sculptor, painter, architect, and poet. And these are his major artworks: Sistine Chapel Ceiling, David, Pieta, and St. Peter's Basilica. Next and the last artist in High Renaissance is Raffaello, known as Raffaello Sanzio da Urbano, who was an Italian painter and architect during the High Renaissance. His work is admired for its visual. Now these are his major artworks: School of Athens, Portrait of Pope Julius II, and Three Graces. Let's proceed to the last stages, which is the late Renaissance or the Mannerism. Late Renaissance artworks that frequently used other works of art as models can be seen during the late Renaissance, also known as the Mannerist period. Their main focus was the human figure, which was frequently exaggerated, extended, graceful, and posed in ridiculous ways. These are the artists and major artworks of late Renaissance or Mannerism. The first one is Titian or Tiziano, Vesely or Biselio are commonly referred to Titian in English, was an Italian Renaissance painter who was regarded as the most significant member of the Venetian school in 16th century. He experimented with many different styles of painting which embody the development of art. These are Tiziano's major artworks, which is The Rape of Europa and
Sacred of Profane.
last artist, El Greco. El Greco was a Greek-born Spanish Renaissance artist who combined influences from his studies in Venice and the Spanish medieval tradition with the strict Byzantine style of his native Greece. And these are El Greco's major artworks. The Resurrection, the Assumption of Virgin, and the Holy Trinity. The next reporter will discuss about the historical development of fine art.
Hi everyone, this is Angelica Tunong. For today, we will talk about the historical development of fine arts. So are you excited to learn the historical development of fine arts with me today? If yes, so let's get started. So now, I will be discussing to you what is fine arts. Fine art or the fine arts from the 17th century on denote art forms developed primarily for aesthetics and aura concepts, distinguishing them from applied arts that also serve some practical function. Some artists gained freedom by at the courts of monarchs and the nobility, while others made art to sell directly to individual working collectors. As a result, art academic became increasingly important as a way to enter into a profession without conforming to guild regulations. So now we have 5 main fine arts. The first one is a painting, second is sculpture, third is architecture, and the fourth is a music and a poetry, with performing arts including theater and dance. In practice, outside education, the concept is typically only applied to the visual arts. The old master print and drawing were included as related forms of painting. Today, the range of what will be considered fine arts are commonly includes additional modern forms, such as film, photography, video productions or editing, design, and conceptual art. In the 17th to 19th century of fine arts, we have Baroque period, Rococo, Neoclassicism, and lastly, Romanticism. So let's discuss this one by one. Let's start first with Baroque period. The Baroque period refers to an era that started around 1600 and ended around 1750 and included composers like Bach, Vivaldi, and Handel, who pioneered new styles like the concerto and the sonata. The Baroque period saw an explosion or a new musical styles with the introductions of the concerto and sonata and the opera. Of course, the term Baroque was derived from a Portuguese word meaning a pearl of irregular shape. Its qualities were mostly associated with grandeur, extravagance, and sensuous rhythm. Baroque is a style of architectures, music, dance, painting, sculptures, poetry, and other arts that flourished in the Europe from the early 20th century until 1740s. The major characteristics of Baroque arts are it evokes a sense of grandeur, reverence, and awe. It is highly ornate, it features figures and motions, and it uses deep contrast, especially of light and dark. So here is an example of Baroque period. As we can see in the first pictures, we have Samson and Delilah, 1609 to 1610 by Peter Paul Rubens, and the great Flemish Baroque painter. Peter Paul Rubens in 1577 to 1640, he is the one of the famous Baroque painters between 1600 and 1608. He spent a considerable amount of time in Italy and visited, among other cities, Venice, Florence, and Rome. Also, Rubens developed a unique painting styles with an emphasis on colors, movement, sensuality, and light. The moral lessons of this painting is that love can cause a problems. So alright, let's proceed to our next example. So the next one is Ecstasy of Saint Teresa, year 1647 to 52. Cornaro Chapel, Santa Maria della Victoria, and Rome by Gian Lorenzo Bernini. It was designed and completed by Gian Lorenzo Bernini, the leading sculptor of his day, who also designed the seating of the chapel in marble, stucco, and paint. It is generally considered to be one of the sculptural masterpieces of the High Roman Baroque. Okay, so the next one we have here Rococo. Rococo, also referred to as the late Baroque, is an artistic movement that developed in the early part of the 18th century in Paris. This movement was a form of as reactions against the grandeur, symmetry, and strict regulations of the Baroque style in art. Rococo style is interior design and decorative arts, paintings, architectures, and sculptures that originated in the Paris in the early 18th century but was soon adapted throughout the France and later in the other countries. It is characterized by lightness and elegance. Okay, so these are example of Rococo. The first is the Happy Accidents of the Swing, year 1767 to 1768, oil on canvas by Jean-Honoré Fragonard. Jean-Honoré Fragonard, it is an 18th century oil painting which was considered to be one of the masterpieces of the Rococo era. This era was a highly ornamental and theatrical style of decoration which combined asymmetry, scrolling, curves, gilding, white and pastel colors, and molding and motions and drama, etc. The Swing, it is the most famous piece of a French artist. Jean-Honoré Fragonard was a French painter and printmaker. Okay, next we have Soft Bubbles, year 1733 to 34, oil and canvas by Jean-Baptiste Simeon Chardin. Soft Bubbles was the first of many paintings by Jean-Simeon Chardin that depicted the life of curiosity of children. This paintings combines his style of paintings of everyday life with the youth and innocence. Last example of Rococo is Perrault by Jean-Antoine Watteau. Jean-Antoine Watteau is a famous clown Perrault in the 17th century, originally known as simply as Giles, the generic term of clown in French. Recent research has identified that the characteristic in the picture is in the fact of Perrault. Jean-Antoine Watteau sensuously painted Rococo, conveyed courtly love and ideas of reverie, longing, and... Okay, so now let's proceed to the Neoclassicism. Neoclassicism started in 1760 as a reaction against Baroque and Rococo styles. It is a revival of the styles and a spirit of classic antiquity inspired directly from the classical period in 18th and 19th century. Okay, so Neoclassicism is the arts and the aesthetic attitude based on the art of Greece and Rome in antiquity, which invokes harmony, clarity, restraint, universality, and idealism. Neoclassicism is characterized by clarity of form, colors, shadow space, strong horizontal and vertical. So the example of Neoclassicism. The first is the Oath of Horatia, oil on canvas, year 1784 by Jacques Louis David. Oath of Horatia is a large painting by a French artist, Jacques Louis David, painting in 1784 and now on display in the Paris. The painting immediately became a huge success with critics and the public and remains one of the best-known paintings in the neoclassical style. Jacques-Louis David was born on August 30, 1748, the most celebrated French artist of his day and a principal exponent of the late 18th century neoclassical reactions against the Rococo style. Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres was a French artist who was a part of the Neoclassicism movement in the 1800s. Ingres paintings such as La Grande Eau de Lake 1814 displayed his desire to maintain the principles of the academic arts tradition to defiance of the emerging Romantic movement. Lastly, we have Romanticism. Romanticism began as a literary and philosophical movement, as the term comes from romance, a prose of poetic narrative favoring heroism that originated in the medieval times. It was full of raw emotions ranging from longing and out to fear and horror rising against rationalism. Romanticism, first defined as the aesthetic and literary criticism around 1800s, gained momentum as an artistic movement in France and Britain in the early decades of the 19th century and flourished until mid-century, with the emphasis of the imagination and emotions. Okay, so we have 4 examples and 4 artists of Romanticism. First one is Liberty Leading the People, Oil on Canvas, year 1830 by Eugene Delacroix. Liberty Leading the People, 1830 by Eugene Delacroix is considered one of the most revolutionary paintings of French history and French Romanticism. It is described as a national icon, depicting and symbolizing the French uprising against the monarchy at of the time it was painted. Second one is the Wrath of the Mendoza, to year 1818 to 1819 by Theodore Géricault. Theodore Géricault painted when Géricault was just 27 years old. The craft of the Mendoza is considered an instant classic of a romantic movement. The craft of the Mendoza depicts of dramatic moments and all emotions human beings can feel in, such as a situation, fear, pain, hope, and madness. To do this painting, Géricault studied for a long time that effect of the refraction of light on human body, and for this reason, he drew a lot of preparatory sketches. The third picture is Wanderer Above the Sea of Frog, is a painting by German romantic artist Caspar David Friedrich made in 1880. Caspar David Friedrich was a 19th century German romantic landscape painter, generally considered the most important German artist of his generation. Okay, the last one, we have an evening landscape with an aqueduct. Oil on Canvas, 1818. This work is one of the projected set of 4 monumental landscapes representing the times of day that Géricault painted in his Paris studio. Conceived as a decorated ensemble, the painting fused souvenirs of ruins in the Italian countryside, which the artist had visited in 1816 and 1817. The stormy sky and turbulent mood of these pictures exemplify notions of the sublime and the aesthetic of the emerging romantic movement. Okay, that